I love the like 3 rows here that's mostly empty. Kudos to all of our like first and second row people. You guys are the brave ones. Can everyone hear me okay? I guess that's a good one. Everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Speakers are working. I apologize if the microphone does any weird things. Welcome. I feel like I know about half of the faces in here, and about half of them I don't, which is really exciting, because that means there's a lot of new people here tonight, so welcome everybody. My name is Alex Faber. I'm the Executive Director of the Superior Rivers Watershed Association, and this is our now 3rd annual Streams of the Year event, where we tell you, our community, and our members, and our volunteers about Superior Rivers, our work, what we're doing, what's coming up this year, and just kind of connect after the long, cold, dark winter. First, before we get started on the presentation, I'm really curious, how many people here in this room are members of the Superior Rivers Watershed Association? Woo! Look at that. Wow, awesome. Also raise your hand if you're a volunteer. Current volunteers? Have been a volunteer at some time? Awesome. How many people here are new? Brand new? Awesome. Thank you guys for coming. I'm really excited. So I'm just going to give you a small introduction to Superior Rivers Watershed Association. Formerly the Bad River Watershed Association, we renamed in about 2017 to reflect our broader service area. We were formed in 2002. We're 24 years old. We're coming really close to that 25th anniversary to promote and protect the clean water resources of Wisconsin's Lake Superior Basin. We do this, there's a lot of ways to promote and protect waters, but we do this by envisioning a future in which citizens are stewards of their watersheds. That's you, all of you, making you stewards of your waters and taking care of what matters to you most. We're guided by our values of expanding scientific understanding, engaging the community, informed decision-making, and collaborative efforts. And the primary ways that we do this, which my coworkers will be coming to talk with you about soon, we were founded on citizen science, water quality monitoring, testing our streams and rivers in Wisconsin's Lake Superior Basin to find out what the water quality is. We also do restoration projects. We also sometimes refer to some of these projects as watershed management or planning projects. And we do watershed education. I know some of you in the crowd here work with us in our education work. I'm really excited to be able to talk with you more about that today. Our service area is Wisconsin's Lake Superior Basin, which means all of the streams and rivers which flow into Lake Superior in Wisconsin. So that's as far east as the Wisconsin-Michigan border. That's the Montreal River. We work all the way down south to the Great Divide. The Great Divide is that part of land where the water starts flowing north. We move into Lake Superior rather than going down into the Mississippi. And at this time, we are slowly working our way west. Right now, our furthest west monitoring site is in the Iron River watershed. We monitor Musket Creek, which is just north of Iron River, but we do have some exciting announcements in a little bit to talk about a little bit further west that we are moving. Ultimately, we're connecting people, land, and water. That's who we are. That's what we do. Trying to build those connections and those bridges between the water, you, and the land that keeps it all together. I do want to give a special shout out to our board of directors. Board members, I'm going to pick on you right now. If you're in the room, could you stand up, please? There's more of you. All right. I would love if you guys could just give a round of applause to these board members. We have 8 outstanding board members that help guide the organization, serve as vital volunteer support, ensure that we continue, Our board members join us for board meetings every 2 months, but they also serve on committees, they advise our programs, they help us find money to continue operating, and they're such dedicated minds and hard workers. They really pulled together a lot of this event, that food spread back there. Thank you so much, April and Michelle. They're making it all happen. They recently went through many hours of strategic planning to keep the organization moving in a positive and strategic way. And they're just my favorite people in the world, and I really appreciate them. That said, our board members don't stay with us forever, so they do serve up to 2 3-year terms. And with 8 board members right now, we do have 3 who will be leaving us within the next 12 months. So we are looking for dedicated individuals, potentially from our pool of already committed volunteers who are ready to do a little bit more than just joining us for 6 meetings a year. That's the minimum requirement, but it's also helping to guide the organization, helping with building capacity, and committing to those 3 years of showing up and helping make things like this happen. If you are interested in this, you can find our board member expectations on our website. There's also an application to join on the website, or you can just talk with me, like let's get a coffee and see if this is a good match, if this feels right. You can also talk with board members who are our community members and see what they think about the board and their experiences there. I'm going to go over our finances just shortly. This is called a Sankey chart, so it really helps you see where money flows, like where it comes from and then where it goes. In 2025, I'm happy to report that our income did exceed our expenses enough that we were able to invest back into our programs in 2026. Folks will remember, if you were here at this event last year, we were in a state of worry that we were going to lose grant funding with everything that was happening at this time last year. Luckily, there's proved to be bipartisan support for conservation work. None of our grants went away. Everything has continued with only minor delays. So we've been very fortunate and pretty happy to have a good 2025. We also saw a record donation year, which is in no small part due to the incredible community we have, which is all of you, that ensured that we could remain strong and confident during such a time of uncertainty. So I really appreciate all of you. In 2026, we are expecting a pretty similar year to 2025. We are heavily grant dependent. We have some ongoing major grant programs that you will hear about soon from one of my coworkers. And our donations do continue to support the majority of our water quality work that we do. Yeah, I think that's all I got about finances. My brain can't handle the numbers right now, guys. Because we are heavily grant funded, I do want to do a thank you to our funders. We have some really cool projects going on that would not be possible without the foundations, without the government agencies that support the work of organizations like ours. I also want to thank our business sponsors. We have some incredible businesses in our community. We have such a strong entrepreneurial environment in this area. And these small businesses are, our friends, our volunteers, the people that love our water, and I love that they support us and help promote our work within their communities. So a big shout out to them as well. We also last year launched an Adopt-A-Site program, which I think has also been a really good reason why we had a really great donation year in 2025. It's been really well received. Each monitoring site that my coworker will tell you about in a little bit. Each monitoring site costs us about $500 per year in supplies, equipment, chemicals, and staff time for volunteers to manage, or for us to manage the volunteers and train them. And you guys, the membership, has really responded to the Adopt-A-Site program. So far, we've had 19 sites adopted, which I also just realized that it's 20. We just got a letter in the mail and somebody adopted a site just yesterday, so I did not update this. It's been really exciting to see the support for this program, and it's been really important for keeping our water quality monitoring going strong. And lastly, I just want to thank all you guys. You're part of this community. You make all this possible. We're a really small organization with mostly part-time staff, but it's because of your membership, your donations, all the volunteer energy that you guys provide that we are strong and successful. And as you hear about the work that we do from the staff, you'll see that even for such a small group, we're accomplishing a lot, and that is completely because of all of you guys. So a round of applause for you guys. So first we're going to hear from our water quality coordinator.
I'm Will Kendall. I'm the new guy on the service staff. This event last year was actually where they announced me getting hired, so that's pretty exciting. I've been with this organization for a year. We've talked about it a lot, but I would just also like to thank our volunteers. We had about 76 people volunteer through the 2025 calendar year, and because of all of them, we can continue doing the great work we do. Our capacity is directly tied with the number of volunteers we get, and we can monitor so much farther with all of your guys' help. Even if I was a full-time staff member, there's no way I could monitor all these sites and collect all these bugs without the community's help. So I think it's just an awesome organization to be a part of, and I would really like to say thank you for doing all that you do. One of the two branches of the water quality monitoring program is our macroinvertebrate monitoring. We collect macroinvertebrates twice a year in the spring and fall. We collect them because they're abundant in communities. That little guy in the corner, we can take them out of the stream and not have a very big impact in the local ecology there. And they are really good indicators for stress in the environment. Utilizing the Hilson-Hoff Biotic Index, that table to the left, we can get a correlation for the water quality at that spot in the stream, which is an amazing tool that these bugs let us use. It's also very simple and inexpensive. It doesn't take me very long to train in a handful of macroinvertebrate volunteers to get out in the stream and collect these guys. And we take them back to a lab and give them ID and learn what our water quality is for that stream, which is amazing. Our goal for all of our monitoring is to get sites to baseline. Our baseline definition for macroinvertebrate monitoring is having a site be monitored once per year for 4 years within a 6-year time period. The idea behind the baseline is that we'll have a data set that is large enough to start to understand trends, and we can come back to it in the future and see how the water quality has been shifting through the time. Quick show of hands, how many people here have done macroinvertebrate monitoring with us? Nice. That's amazing. Thank you guys. The other branch of the monitoring program is our chemistry monitoring. Our chemistry volunteers go out the first Saturday of every month, and they go out until a site reaches baseline, or they continue their monitoring. Baseline for chemistry is when a site gets sampled 8 out of 12 months for 4 years. Quick show of hands, how many people here are chemistry volunteers? Nice, you guys are the unsung heroes. They test the pH, so the acidity or how basic the water is, the dissolved oxygen, the temperature, the transparency, so how well you can see through the water, and chloride, which is directly correlated with road salt usage. Again, this is where we work. We have about 36 sites, ranging from Muscade Creek out west to the Montreal out east. If you're interested in learning more about any of these, we have a site map on our homepage on our website that gives you more write-ups on these individual sites that I'm really excited to share with you guys. 10 of our chemistry sites are at baseline currently, and 16 of our macroinvertebrate sites are at baseline. Most of these sites are both macro and chem, but there are a few outliers there where it's just safer to monitor macros in a different spot than to do chemistry there. And we're planning to add 3 more sites. We're still nailing down specific locations, working with partners on what makes sense to monitor. But the plan is to have one on the Brule River, one near Menoomin Creek, and then we're also going to revive a site that was once at baseline during the foundation of this organization. Back in 2003 to 2012, there was a site near the headwaters of the White that we're hoping to bring back. So if you know anyone in any of those areas, feel free to send them my way. So now everyone's favorite part, we get to talk about our data. So all of this data was collected in the 2025 calendar year. I think this calendar is very cool. It's a very good textbook example of the relationship between temperature and dissolved oxygen. You can see that they're inverse relationships. As the water temperature increases, the dissolved oxygen decreases. And this is just across all of our sites. And I included the cold water boundary. So not all of our sites are on trout streams, but trout streams class 1 and class 2 are cold water communities, and to be within that community, they have to be colder than that line and have more dissolved oxygen than that line. You can see some outliers, like way down here. That site happened at Deer Creek, and I thought it was really interesting. At first I thought maybe someone miswrote something, but looking in the data sheet, the transparency, so how well you could see through it, was at 6 centimeters, so you couldn't see deeper than 6 centimeters worth of water. So they were basically sampling mud, like a mud slurry at that point. I think it's a really cool, it's cool to see that our data is fine-tuned enough to catch those things. This is pH. pH has natural fluctuations through the year and through the day, and it varies depending on the ecosystem you're in. The state maximum and state minimum are labeled, and you can see that all of our streams and creeks are well within that range. Chloride, the most common way it enters our waterways is through the use of road salt. The natural levels range from 0 to 100 parts per million. But the real kicker is it's really expensive to get out of the water. It's really easy for salt to dissolve and get into the water. And it's more of an issue down south, but we monitor it because we want to, you have to know what it was to protect it in the future. But we're well below like any threshold. We also have volunteers collect site assessment data like flow. Being able to paint the big picture can really help us key into why some of our test results come up the way they do. For example, there was one site that had literally no flow. It was on a perch culvert, and their macroinvertebrate data came back as fair, which is not very standard for this area. Most of our macroinvertebrate data comes back in the like excellent to good range. So to have people doing these like site assessment stuff really just helps paint that big picture. This is all of our macroinvertebrate data from the 2025 season. We still have about 4 to 5 sites we're working through, but you can see that the range of our macro data ranges from fair to excellent, and there's of course variability year to year and sampler to sampler, but in general, we have really good water quality. Our expert macroinvertebrate IDer likes to receive our samples because of the diversity of macroinvertebrates we get. And I think it's really amazing. All these little green diamonds are our line 5 sites that I'll talk about in a little bit. This is just so you have reference to them in the whole scheme. A quick shout out to Mashkazidi for helping us monitor these sites. We have 6 sites along the proposed 5-line reroute. Again, our goal is to get data, to get stuff to baseline, to know what the water quality is. This is a more extensive write-up on the line 5 data results. You can see that it ranges from fair to excellent. The 2 data points that are in the fair range was at Bear Trap Creek, and that was the one that I was mentioning earlier that has a perch culvert, and the flow was non-existent at the time of sampling, which could be impacting that result. The other one was at Deer Creek. It's a small tributary feeding into the White River. And looking at the habitat assessment data, back in 2001, it was estimated to have a gravel bottom of about 45%, versus in fall 2025, it says that the gravel bottom is about 10%. So a bunch of silt has moved in, and if you go to the story map and click on the Deer Creek story map, you'll see that a beaver has moved in, and it's kind of slowed down the flow and increased the silt and sediment load there, which might not be the best spot for macros anymore. Looking forward into 2026, we're really pushing to try getting monthly reports out to all of our chemistry volunteers so they can see their data compared to other people's data in real time. And then we're also working hard to make individual watershed reports that can highlight and teach about the most recent data for the Montreal fish, the Bayfield Peninsula, the white, the Marengo, the Tile Forks, the potato, and the bad. So everyone look forward to that. And again, just another shout out to our volunteers. We can't do what we do without you guys. Dedicated long-term volunteers just produce really good data, and to have you guys that are so passionate makes it really worthwhile to work here. I thank you guys for that. And if you know anyone in the rural area, let me know. And our macroinvertebrate spring season's coming up. There's a sign-up sheet in the back if you're interested. That's my part.
Okay. Sweet. My name's Emma Holton. I am the education coordinator here at SURWA. I've been with the organization since 2021. And I'm excited to talk to you about what we've got going on. So our education program has multiple components. One being the Rivers to Lake Educator Professional Development Program. Rivers to Lake is hosted by the Lake Superior National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is based out of Superior. And we've been able to partner with them through the years, thanks to different grants. Right now, thanks to a Wisconsin Coastal Management Grant, and our partnership allows us to more effectively share the benefits of the program. So Rivers to Lake supports, mentors, and empowers educators. Every year we accept a group of teachers into a cohort who apply, and are selected. Teachers that apply are interested in outdoor and play-centered learning, focused on the Lake Superior watershed. We start the year with them with a 4-day immersive learning experience, and then we have multiple touch points with the whole cohort throughout the year. And then we're working with the teachers on a one-on-one individual basis about once a month. I'll see them to kind of check in, and then we'll do co-teaching or outdoor experience with their students. So the power of the program is really the consistency and the longevity of it. So we're supporting teachers in the places that they teach. This is all the places that Rivers to Lake has touched in the past. This year I am working with 4 teachers, specifically on the South Shore, 3 at Washburn Elementary and 1 at South Shore Elementary. We do our best in our Rivers to Lake program to meet teachers where they're at, both physically in space. So when I'm going to check in or teach with them, I'm going into their classrooms or the schoolyard or the school forest or an area that the students are familiar with outside. And then also we're going to meet them where they're at, mentally, confidence-wise, and skill-wise. And we're doing all of this with the hopes that it's easier to replicate if we're meeting them in the place that they are. And we're meeting them to help them use the Lake Superior watershed as a foundation for student learning. So the bulk of our time with the Rivers to Lake team is finding and creating and adapting lessons to make them focus on the Lake Superior watershed. So the people, the land, the water, the flora, the fauna, all that good stuff that still meets their required state standards. Teachers have a lot of standards they need to meet, and it is time-consuming and difficult to really make that local, but we know and we can see in their students how meaningful it is when it is local. So that's at Bark Bay, and then working with our watershed model. And all the while we are prioritizing outdoor and inquiry-based experiences for the students. So how can we take their learning outdoors, and how can we make them leaders of their own learning? And again, we're doing this by providing the people support, the ideas, the person to bounce ideas off of, but the program also provides financial resources for teachers, to go on field trips, to get classroom supplies, to make these fun experiences possible. So that's actually the Washburn Elementary School ground, where you can see the lake in the background. So very blessed at Washburn. And Rivers Lake is working on building educational relationships that last and grow. So it's definitely a relationship-based program. We're working really hard on building good relationships with the teachers, and we're working also hard to facilitate relationships between the teachers. And this is becoming more and more successful. Last year, I got to see kind of the fruits of this. I was working with 3 teachers in the program last year who are all high school teachers around the area. And we roped in an alumni of the program who was another high school teacher in the area. And we kind of schemed up this presentation for the Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers conference last April, where they all presented on just like the amazing ways that they're connecting their student learning to watersheds and getting their students out in rivers and on the lake using that data. And a lot of these teachers are like the majority of, if not their sole science department at their school. And so having people to connect with, commiserate with, and just in general like collaborate with was really beneficial and really moving for us to see on the Rivers Lake team. And during our time together, we started scheming up if we could get all of the students together. And so this year that is coming to fruition. I'm working closely with Andrea Pokshavinsky at Ashland High School, and we are, Andrea's here tonight. I won't throw her the bus too much. And we are working to plan this Superior River Student Watershed Summit. It's going to be here at the Visitor Center on April 23rd. It's looking like we're going to get students from all 4 of the schools, so Ashland, Bayfield, Washburn, and South Shore, to come together, do some work and research on Superior River's data, and then we'll be doing different activities like playing the watershed game, which is all about managing a watershed, and other fun activities. Andrea and I have been talking a lot about how cool it would be for our partners to join us on this day, and also volunteers and interested community members. So if you want to come engage, hear student presentations, play games with students, talk about data with them, we'd love to have you. So I have a little RSVP QR code up here. And yeah, really excited about this day. And then the other piece to that is that we're working on building a data nugget. So data nuggets are an online resource for teachers that use like real live data and real connected stories, again, to help teachers meet standards in more meaningful ways. So that survey data that the students will be working with, we're actually going to make into a data nugget so that it will be accessible to all teachers. So I'm really excited for Serwa's data to have that platform. And we are grateful to the Ashland Education Fund and Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers for making that and other pieces of this project possible. So another piece of our education program that we're super pumped about is that we are going to be co-hosting a Wisconsin Master Naturalist training for the first time this year in collaboration with the Lake Superior Collaborative. So if you're unfamiliar with Master Naturalists, in their own words, they support a network of well-informed volunteers and instructors dedicated to conservation, service, leadership, and lifelong learning. We've gained a lot of really amazing volunteers through working with the Master Naturalist program. We've been presenters at the Cable Natural History Museum's Master Naturalist training for years now, but they're kind of shifting focus more locally in the years to come, and there's still a desire for kind of a Lake Superior focused course. So we are stepping up to the plate. So Master Naturalist training is 40 hours of hands-on learning, and you connect with all these different presenters. This is our killer facilitation team. So Alex, Katie, who's the Lake Superior Collaborative Coordinator, and myself. The planning process is long, but I think we've all felt just a lot of gratitude for the network of folks that we find ourselves working amongst, and it's going to be a really fun experience, and there's still space left, so you should totally sign up. And ours is going to be over 2 long weekends. In August, we'll be out on Fish Creek, we'll be up at Beaver Hollow, we'll be in Superior, we'll be Frog Bay, we'll be at the Coaster Classroom on Whittlesey Creek, all sorts of places with all sorts of amazing presenters. So, again, there's still spots left. And then we are in our 3rd year of hosting Science on Tap at the Alley. We took it over 3 years ago. So if you've never joined us for National Science on Tap, I would highly recommend it. It is pretty sweet. Every 3rd Tuesday of the month, we have a scientist or science-adjacent person come and give a 30 to 45-minute presentation. They do a little Q&A. You can drink beer, you can eat food, you can listen to them talk. It's really fun. The next couple months, we have a really good lineup of presentations. This month, we have a Northern Michigan University master's student talking about animal research. Next month, a UMD professor is coming to talk about ticks, specifically like citizen science projects around ticks, so if you're interested in that. In May, Katie from Trout Unlimited is going to give a talk on beaver and trout and their relationship. And then in June, we're going to have folks from the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey come up and talk about groundwater around Lake Superior. And then the last piece I'm going to talk about is our Plant Relatives and Communities Healing Fish Creek Slough project. Kevin's also going to talk about this, so he'll give more details, but the general scope, if you haven't heard about it, is that we're cutting cattails in Prentice Park, the Fish Creek sloughs. And the project has a large focus on community engagement. This photo is from last year. Kat Techman gave, we did a field trip, a floating field trip, you could say, through the sloughs and back in time. It was really fun. This year we will be having more field trips and workshops, so things like birding and plant walks, foraging, and then hopefully some cattail crafting. So that will be fun. We want to hear from you and connect with you about this project, so we have an online survey where you can tell us about you and Fish Creek, and then we'll be having some times for you to drop in, connect, chat about this project, ask questions, etc. At the office and then around local community hangouts in the spring and summer. You can get involved in helping us monitor this project. There is this thing called a chronologue out on the bridge over Fish Creek, kind of on that walking bike path between Prentice Park and Meslowski Beach. It's literally just a sign and a wood block, and all you have to do is set your phone on it, take a picture, and submit it via email or QR code. Photo monitoring is super helpful for us to kind of manage or monitor change over time. So now we know what the slough looks like on an average year with cattails. So we'll be excited to see what it looks like when some of those cattails are gone. And then looking forward, we'll also have some stewardship opportunities. So there will be some mechanical cutting of cattail, but we'll also need volunteers to help hand cut to kind of make up the rest of it. And then when the time comes, we're also going to need help spreading seed of native plants. So we'd love for you to be involved with that. And I think that wraps up my section.
I'm the restoration coordinator here at Serwa. And I rehearsed this yesterday, and I went so far over time and it's horrible. So I'm just preparing you here for what may happen. So, yeah, we've got 2 really exciting projects that we're halfway into right now. They're both 3 and 4 year projects. Accelerating natural flood control in the Lake Superior, southern Lake Superior Basin is one, and the aforementioned cattail removal restoration in Prentice Park and the slough is the other. I'll start with this one. So we're in a multi-partner arrangement here with this project. This is funded by NOAA. Too loud or too quiet? And we are not the primary recipient of funding for this thing, but this has gone to the Wisconsin Wetlands Association and the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. And then there are a number of other partners engaged as well, Trout Unlimited and others. So basically, to make this short and sweet, I always get bogged down describing what we're doing here, so I'm going to do it right this time. This is about natural flood management. In other words, imagine trees being planted in the right places. Imagine, diverting ditching that's causing excess flow into roadside ditches or into streams. Things like that. Reconnecting floodplains to their rivers and streams. Reconnecting wetlands that are naturally connected to streams of various kinds. Those are what we call natural flood control versus infrastructure like concrete and steel and more expense. So what we're doing here basically is this project started actually back in 2021, 22 with Act 157 funding grant to Ashland County. And they did basically a flood risk assessment for the Marengo River watershed, which is basically the most hydrologically impaired one in the basin here. And the outcome from all that work was basically a data toolbox or a way to predict flood risk based on observation of different kinds of features on the landscape. So these are good examples of what we end up calling fluvial erosion hazards. That's a bit of jargon, but basically what that is indications on the landscape where there are either tendencies for flooding to cause damage or there is evidence of damage from flooding. So in other words, erosion basically and deposition. So we have the incision of stream channels you see there in the upper left, where the erosion causes the stream to cut down deeply and then the waters can't overflow naturally into the floodplain during high flows to absorb and slow down that flow of water. We have landslides, bank failures in streams and rivers around here due to our unique geology, superficial geology that we have here that makes it sort of a perfect storm for erosion and loss. And obviously when we have that kind of loss of material, it has to go somewhere, so we end up with sandbars and different kinds of depositional structures happening, which are smothering out stream floodplain ecosystems and causing changes in flow patterns that are not healthy for the watershed. So these are like basic elements on landscape that through geospatial basically analysis and then on the ground sort of ground truthing, we decide and identify, okay, where are these high-risk areas and how can we affect some kind of an improvement using natural infrastructure such as trees, floodplain connection, and all the things I mentioned earlier. So for the Marengo watershed, we came up with this, basically what I call a toolbox, where, and I'm going to be very brief with this is where I always get bogged down, but basically those risk factors I described earlier, or fluvial erosion hazards, are added up, if you will, into the way of assessing risk or scoring risk on the landscape. So in this case, using the Marengo as an example, we've got things like channel gradients, the type of soils that are present, wetlands and potentially restorable wetlands, which I won't get into, mass loss, which is like the erosion and the caving in of the stream banks that we saw earlier, agricultural ditching, which can be a real big issue, and then road stream crossing failures, or we call repetitive loss sites. So all the townships around here are plagued with loss of culverts every spring or after a big event, big precipitation event. It's very expensive. It's an ongoing issue, and obviously a very good indicator of where the problem areas are. And so we sort of add all that up in sort of a geostatistical way, and we come up with a cumulative score, risk score for each watershed. So what we're doing now with this current project is we're going to extend this toolbox and this knowledge base that we have into 4 new watersheds. That will be the White River, Fish Creek, Montreal, and the Magic. So that'll be we're sort of halfway into that now. And at the end of that, what we hope to have, we will have, is a set of firm priorities where the problems lie. We've identified where they exist. We triage it down. Okay, what's the most urgent of these problems? And then we're working with townships and counties to then come up with restoration projects. So an important part of that process, obviously, is community outreach. We have to go out to the townships and the counties and sit down with them and figure out where the problem areas are, what's the history, how they dealt with this. And we've come up with a lot of things going to these meetings. There are a lot of common threads here. You know, we're all having a lot of the same kinds of problems. There's a lot of amazing ingenuity that's been done on a small level, you know, to cope with this stuff, because nobody in this region is horribly wealthy. These townships are struggling just to make their snow removal and all their other expenses each year. So with flooding, when flooding comes along, it can really mess up their economics. So we've been traveling around. We've done, I believe, 8 of these now in the new watersheds. And what we come up with, and we have it set up over there in the corner, you'll see a demonstration of that when we're done here. We basically project a map of the basin onto a tabletop like this. And then everybody sits down and says, oh, well, here's a problem we've had for years, etc. And we break it down into, basically, is it an erosion problem? Is it a flooding problem? Or is it a repetitive loss, like culvert washout kind of problem? So that's been really useful, and you see those little ovals and polygons and whatnot. Those represent, you know, the actual, you know, everybody's ideas about what's going on and how they want to address it. The other big project we're doing right now, as was mentioned earlier, is the cattail removal in the Fish Creek Slough. And we're about 1.5 years into that, and we're coming up on where we're actually going to cut cattails. Now it's been a long, drawn-out process of getting permits, doing pre-project surveys, etc. But it's right around the corner. We're excited about doing some cutting this summer and fall. So basically, you see over there on the right, that's that sort of shaded area. Those are the delineated areas that we're going to cut initially. We may do more than that, but that's where we're going to start. Here's just some of the stuff we're working on for getting permits and just trying to get a better understanding of the area we're working in. This is actually a profile. It shows the depth, and this is actually very useful for us because in the ultimate result of this, we want to have a chance to restore manoomin, or wild rice here, where it was historically growing. So we need to find a very narrow range of environmental parameters where it will successfully grow. And this sort of work helps us sort of narrow down to where we would do the planting work. Cattails will be removed with a mechanism called a marsh master, which is basically a floating, or it can be an amphibious machine that just cuts down the stalks. And then they're collected either manually, or there's also a collecting barge that's potentially usable there. And what the result of that is a tremendous amount of cut biomass, or stalks, that we have to dispose of. So the plan is that these will be disposed of at the city composting facilities here in Ashland, and also possibly used by a commercial composter here to make soil amendment products. We had to do quite a bit of monitoring to ascertain if there was wild rice historically here. In other words, in our core samples, as you see being taken here, are there legacy seeds present in those samples? So we sent these out to Grand Valley College in Allendale, Michigan, Lower Michigan, and Dr. I forgot her name. Thank you. Sarah Johnson is leading a group of students right now that is doing laboratory work to find out what's going on. If we have seed bank actually present, or if we have to seed, we probably have to add seed ourselves. And also there are other plants involved that can regenerate naturally that we're interested in as well. Some of the other pre-project monitoring work we did, we monitored for bats out there on the marsh. We got some interesting data there. Will went out and got really cold and wet one day, and tried to install a water level logger, which ended up not working, but that's another story we'll talk about later. Also, we did a frog call survey and had, again, very, very slim data results, but at least we made the effort. At the time, there were very few frogs, 50. So this is that laboratory work at the college we were talking about. And so basically, we provided 20 samples of mud and shipped it over there to the college. And now they're growing them in growth chambers to see what comes up. And they are sprouting. There are some pictures of more recent work here where they're sprouting, and they have to reach a certain stage before they can be identified. But basically, the result of this study is going to be a paper that will be published very soon on what was found and what are the ramifications for restoration. What species are there? What species are more likely to respond to restoration efforts, and so on. So it's kind of key evidence and key information for us as far as driving forward the restoration side of this project as we get there. We also grew some manoomin, or wild rice, that was contributed by a volunteer and member here. That we sent the seed over to the lab so they could grow it as controls to make sure that they were able to grow rice. So then the field samples will obviously be capable of generating rice because it was growing successfully as a control. We also did some physical and chemical analysis. One of the chemical water chemistry parameters that sort of affects the health of wild rice is sulfates. And so we had some work done there. Basically, they would use a centrifuge and pull water out of our soil samples to determine the sulfate level. And I'm happy to say it's very low. So that's good news for regenerating wild rice. We also did a soil and tissue toxicity analysis of the cattail itself in case it was carrying heavy metals, because that would be inappropriate to use as a composting product. And again, I can say that we have very good results, very clean, very low metals in the tissue. The last thing there, we did basically a mass analysis where I weighed a whole bunch of cut cattail stalks, trying to get an idea of what the wet mass of the cut stalks is going to be when it's taken off the site. And believe me, it's a lot. And lastly, as Emma mentioned, with all this cut material, we have kind of an opportunity for an interesting community involvement thing here where we can do some crafting. April Stone, our board president, provided these left two images that show the early stages of the weaving process of the fibers, which you can make amazing basketry and art forms, mats, all kinds of things. So we're hoping to get some kind of workshops and things going here to make the most of this resource when it's coming off the water. And then the restoration, which is the big second phase of this after the cutting. Our main goal is to at least get a test plot or several test plots of manoomin reestablished. And this is what it would look like. These are what are called exclosures, which are basically fenced in patches of planted rice, which are of a certain size and dimensions, which discourages geese and swans and so on from coming in and chowing down before they have a chance to grow. And there are also a number of other important plants there. We are basically following the guidance of the Ghana Winter Walk, which was produced by the Glyphwig and the Estuary Reserve and University of Wisconsin. And basically that's just a document that explains from the native perspective, traditional knowledge, how these plants interact, how they help each other, and how they help the landscape. And we're using that as sort of a guidance as far as, okay, here are the species that we have here, which ones need to be reproduced here and restored so that we have a more harmonious and so getting back to a more original kind of wetland balance that's sort of driving this whole thing. Here's a little bit of a statistic there on the bottom. This is one of the last plant surveys that Northland College did a few years ago, and basically was really good news because what's listed there are at least 8 other species that are
important in that guidance that are there and will be encouraged to regrow. That's it. Thank you.